All right, welcome back, everyone, to Blue Collar Startup. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Nelson from Five Towers Media, joined by the other host,
Derek Foster of Daigle Cleaning Systems.
Yes.
How are you today, Mike?
I am well.
Good.
Well caffeinated.
Yeah?
Vibrant, peppy.
You're on.
I'm on. That's
There we
right.
go.
That's right. We're ready to go. Joined by some special guests. Special in the good way.
Chris Manzella, BradManz Landscaping, and my son Noah Manzella.
Noah, say hi, Noah.
How you doing?
I thought he was going to say hi, Noah. That would have been
I
perfect.
know. Yeah, I could've said that.
Here, bring that mic a little closer to you. And let's see, what are you? You're number 2, right? Okay, go ahead. Noah, just tell everybody who you are.
I am Noah Manzella. This is my dad. I'm a current graduate of RIT, and I am going to work for Stanley Black & Decker as an industrial designer in a couple weeks.
Nice.
Congratulations, by the way. That's
Yeah.
that's amazing. And you just graduated, right?
I did last Friday.
No rest at all.
We basically brought
right at it.
We wanted Noah on the podcast to raise the average IQ
yeah.
in the room
Just a hair.
a few points.
That's why I brought him.
We're dragging you down. I'm sorry.
You're
about
welcome. No, I'm just kidding.
that. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
So to our regular listeners, I know we've been mixing up formats a little bit, trying to give you guys a little variety. A couple weeks ago, we sat down with the folks from Catamount Consulting, Scott and Stacy, kind of had a little roundtable discussion about business ownership and entrepreneurship and how that affects workforce development. And one of the things that we're trying to make sure that we're doing for all of you young business owners or aspiring business owners in the trades is that we're giving you something that's really usable. And so today, what we are attempting to do is to talk about business development or sales or whatever terms you want to use, but really what it takes to start a business and get clients when you have nothing. Or maybe if you have a couple of clients, but you're looking to get more clients. And we're going to talk about that. Both myself and Derek and Chris all have extensive, at this point, because we're old men, extensive experience as far as sales go. And all three of us also have started businesses that didn't exist before and then been able to sell and bring them up. So I want to talk about that from a in the beginning standpoint. Let's start there anyway, and kind of talk about what it looked like for us to get those first few clients in, and then kind of some of those experiences. So Chris, lead us off. Tell us with BradManz, like what was, when you were first starting, where was your business coming from?
So initially when we first started, it was, let me back up, because I started this business a little later in age. I had some prior knowledge, obviously more sales experience, more experience in general. Mm-hmm. But that was word of mouth. So it was me letting people know in my life that I'm doing this, and if you know anybody that's looking, or if you're looking for any of these services that we can provide you, please don't hesitate to reach out. So there was definitely a lot of tuition paid, and what I mean by that is we went in there and priced accordingly to get the jobs, so we could start building a portfolio of work, having other people see it, because that oftentimes is you're in a neighborhood doing a job, somebody sees what you're doing, maybe knows the neighbor that they're having the work done at, or we're doing the work, and then subsequently says, hey, I need a new front walk, or I need a new landscape, or whatever it is that they're looking for. They will see us there, and then that's an opportunity, right? So the more you're out. But initially, that's how it was, word of mouth. Not a lot of like a financial campaign to do marketing, if you will, or traditional marketing. Definitely nothing related to what we have today, which is social media when I first started, because that was kind of just new in terms of advertising.
Well, I mean, everything was done via telegram when we were younger, right? Yeah. Like that was Morse code or something along those lines before the
We had a horse and buggy.
Horse and buggy, right? Yeah, you were pulling equipment around, loaders, pulling loaders around with a horse and buggy.
Yeah,
Steam-powered equipment.
That's right.
Coal burners, steam-powered, absolutely.
Let me I want to unpack that a little bit, because you said a couple of things there that I think are really important to listeners and to help them fully understand that, because you hear the term word of mouth a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And that can mean, well, I just, I did a job and then word of mouth got around that I was doing that stuff. And so business walked in the door. And I don't want to give listeners the impression that that's going to be the end all be all strategies, because at that point you're hoping you get word of mouth, and hope is not a strategy. So, but also what you said in there, though, was that you went and got in front of people and were telling them, here's what we're doing. If you have, if you're looking for any of that kind of stuff, please think of us. Kind Can you expand on that a little bit about like who those people were that you first went in front of, and then like what that conversation really sounded like?
Well, so like the first person I called was a real estate agent friend of mine, and I told him, I said, look, I'm doing this. If you know any customers that you have that you've sold a home for or are going to sell a home, if they have a project, please, send that out. And ironically, he was one of the first jobs we had, a small job. But in the beginning, I just needed to have something for my partner at the time to do because he left his company. We needed to generate a paycheck. And my goal was to just get to the point where the company could sustain that even before I got paid. So initially it was a real estate agent, and then friends and family, right? Yeah. When you're older, starting a business with the means to be able to sustain that business, you have the luxury of we're in that space and time where, in terms of age, that a lot of my peers now have the money to do these types of projects. So it kind of hit at the right time where I was doing large scale landscape projects, and or the company was, and we could go to people that were looking to have a new pool project or backyard and basically say, look, I'm going to do a design for you. We're going to do all this, and I'm going to give you a price you can't,
say no to. Yeah.
And it will be done right. So like that's what I was referring to in the beginning, tuition, right?
Yeah, which I love that, by the way, paying tuition.
Yeah.
The idea that you're not going to go in and make millions of dollars. You got to learn some lessons. You've got to learn some things, and it's the school of hard knocks from that standpoint.
Absolutely.
Even if you went to RIT.
The cost of doing projects, there's two things to that, right? One is giving them a good deal up front. But even in the end, when you get to the point where you're doing the finishes, doing it to the complete, to the end of the project. A lot of contractors, whether it's in my industry or other industries that are in construction, will do what they're hired to do and miss an opportunity on the details that pay off. Customer wants things done when their expectation is it's going to be done and look right when it's finished, not that they're going to have to do 3 other things or call another company and to do the extras when you could have done it when you were there. Obviously, if there's a cost involved, you have that conversation with your client. But in general, if you're doing a patio, forget about doing like plantings, but if you're doing a patio around somebody in the backyard, there's a lot of contractors that I've seen where they'll excavate, they'll put the patio in, and then they will leave the ground unfinished, meaning not ready for seed. They need topsoil, just basic stuff. Customers like, wait, are you going to finish? And you hired us to put in whether it's a stamped concrete project or a patio, you hired us to do this. And we did that. But customer doesn't know that you're not going to, they want it done, turnkey.
Yeah.
They don't want to be like, wait, I got to hire somebody else to do that. It's okay to be ahead of that and say, look, I don't know how much material we're going to need, but we're going to need so many yards of material, give or take. This is what we charge additionally for that. But and specific to my industry, that's what I do is I basically give them a list of things that will be needed. Can't give you exact quantities because it's all relative to what we decide as the owners and the business. We need to make that decision together. But just budget for that because you're going to need it.
Yeah.
And that's fair. If you're going to force me to put a number to it, it will probably be higher than it should be, truth be told, because I'm going to
as opposed to T&M.
Right.
Yep.
And obviously in your industry, that's how you do TM. It works out well.
Yeah. Well, everybody's protected at that point when you're doing T&M.
Yeah.
Right? It's when you start bidding projects. I mean, we all know that, right? Yeah. How many projects have you bid that you've been burnt on?
Yep.
Because of scope creep, unrealistic expectations, or I didn't do a good job setting expectations and what was included. So, so on the business development, on the sales side, it sounds like in the beginning, it was the low-hanging fruit of friends, family, people that you know that were safe for you to approach. You knew they weren't going to kick your teeth down your throat, with rejection and all those things. And you could kind of get some reps in and have conversations with those folks and then pull a couple jobs to help build a portfolio, which you did aggressively, price-wise, but made sure that you did an amazing job so they were portfolio pieces.
Exactly.
Is that fair? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Derek, how about for you? When you were first starting Daigle, right? It didn't exist before. You're fresh out of RPI, and you did the business program, right?
Yeah.
That's why you're so good. That's why you're so good, Derek.
I don't know about that.
And you had a construction background, not a cleaning background, and we've talked about it on the show. But so, what were the behaviors that you first did when you came out?
Well, it was a combination of different things. I think I had a basic idea of how to approach it and who the target market was. So I spent a little bit of time putting together a plan. I wouldn't call it a full marketing plan, but just an idea of targets and different people that I wanted to talk to. And to Chris's point, leveraging the network of, family, friends, people that, I went to school with, whether that was high school or college, and connecting with as many people as I possibly could. I kind of painted myself, into a corner in my mind mentally, right? Because I wasn't always very outgoing, and I still am not. Like I prefer to not be doing this. And part of the reason I want to do this is to get out of my comfort zone and keep doing it. But it's really uncomfortable to pick up the phone and call people that you don't know, or never spoken to. They don't know who you are, and you're trying to pitch them a concept or an idea of what you're going to accomplish. You have to exude confidence, and you have to be confident in the way that you speak, the way that they interpret what you're saying, and you have to be true to your word and deliver what you say you're going to do. So I had the target market in my mind, and I just gradually started picking away at that. I worked full time during the day, so I was able to do, and my job I was able to be at early and be done by 3:30 in the afternoon. I would scoot back home and get whatever I could done, and work on the business at night. One of my first cold calls was actually to Frank Barbera Homes, and I ran into him about a month ago at a CRBRA event, and we were laughing about it because he was my first cold call, and he listened to me, and gave me the opportunity to clean some of their new construction homes. And fast forward almost 15 years now, we're still doing their work.
So hold on. So your first cold call, you closed the deal?
It wasn't the first one. Okay. It might have been, that first
in
batch,
the beginning,
what I mean?
I was going to say, dude, that is the luckiest thing, because I used to be a cold calling machine, and I just got my teeth kicked down my throat all day, every day.
It's a grind. It really is. And you got to get used to hearing the word no. But in my mind, I kind of painted myself into a corner. I was young. I didn't know any better, have, resources or anything else. So what's the worst that could happen, right? And you kind of paint yourself into a corner, and this is my only option, zero options kind of mentality. And, you pick up the phone and go. And you're going to hear no. But from time to time, and I probably heard 10 no's before I, got to somebody that would give me an opportunity. But all it takes is one or two. Chris's point, you go out, you deliver, you do a good job. And then they're meeting with, people in their industry or that they know at their company and pushing you to other project managers or, to other people that are in their groups and business networking groups. And it snowballs gradually.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of patience and persistence, and you can't be afraid to hear no.
Yeah.
And there's definitely bumps in the road along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, you fall on your face and you might hear no, but it's not, okay, I'm just going to stop doing this. I'm not getting anywhere. Let me sit down, figure out what worked, what went well, what could I have maybe done better. Fix the script or whatever you're using. And I used the one, my script originally when I was emailing was pretty simple. It was like, hey, recent college grad, starting a business. I can tell you that I take pride in what we do. We do a good job. Give me an opportunity. And people responded really well to that. So you can be creative and kind of use, your current situation, and where you're at to get people to listen to you. That's all you need.
I think that's a good point to your original email being that I'm a recent college grad as a catcher. Like for me, I saw that. I'm like, let me give this person, let me just look at it at least.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
this kid
So-
seems motivated, or
Yeah,
this
and
guy wants to
also
do
you
well.
also are thinking, well, if he's just starting out, maybe I can get something done reasonably, right? So there's some
Absolutely.
logic to that. I think the biggest thing that we can all agree on is the cost to get a customer is high. So like ultimately, no matter how you come across that customer, because it could have been a referral that you just lock it in and there's no big deal, but to get to that point where that referral becomes real, because we're in this situation now, luckily, that a lot of the referral business we get, they're wanting us to do whatever it is we do. They just want to know what their cost is. They're not shopping us per se.
Yep.
Now, obviously, being in the trades, there's definitely situations where we're getting 3 quotes. Oftentimes, I'm not interested in those projects because I know my competition, and I know that sometimes if they're going based off of numbers, I'm not the right guy for you.
Yep.
Because it's easy for me to give you a low ball price and then come back to you and say, oh, well, that doesn't include X, Y, and Z.
We've got some change orders here, folks.
Not put the seed down, or
or include a wall that they thought was included. Or,
Right.
I'm going to give you everything, and I'm also going to consult with the person to let them find out what exactly they want, right? Whether they know it or not. Meaning, I've been in plenty of backyards where they think they want X, and not because I'm trying to sell them per se. Indirectly, I guess I am, but in reality, I'm trying to guide them through a project long term, because oftentimes they don't even think about an outdoor kitchen or a pergola or a fire pit or lights or a host of things. And I will say, hey, have you considered this? I see you have a grill there. Is that something you want to incorporate into your project? Or do you need heat, or what are the, so having the showroom helps with that, because then I can bring them here and they can just see it and be like, oh, I want that. I don't know what you want, but I want to at least let you know the possibilities that are there. And it comes from a place of being a consumer myself and having hired contractors myself for other projects, and them not telling me that I could have done X, Y, and Z until after. So I've always been of the mindset of give people the full menu, let them choose, they're smart, and guide them, right? At the end, the customer's going to make the decision based on what they want. You're not going to make that decision. I don't ever want somebody to feel like they got pressured into doing something they didn't want to do. So I deliver the message just like that. I'm like, here's what you're looking to do. Here's what I would advise you to do. But ultimately, it's your choice, right?
Yeah.
And by opening up those they appreciate it because you're consulting them. Now it's their decision.
Well, and you're also selling a service, not being commoditized by 3 bids and a buy or by an RFP or any of those
Absolutely.
things. Like, we actually, as a company, I made the decision years ago, we don't answer RFPs.
Yep.
If you send me an RFP, my immediate response is I send you an email back, say, hey, listen, I really appreciate you sending this over. As a company, as a policy, we don't answer RFPs. Very happy to sit down with you and
Explain
talk
why.
to you about everything and go through a process to discover whether or not we can work together. But just answering an RFP, not doing it. And half the time they're written so poorly anyway.
Yeah, it's a challenge in our industry too, and over time we've kind of learned how to establish the communication. But to your point, Chris, you might walk through on an RFP, walk through and notice a bunch of things that the customer left off, right? And you're not gonna, and if you don't tell them that, hey, you're not gonna get the result that you're looking for,
just that,
unless you do X, Y, and Z, then they're gonna hire whoever they decide to go by the and if they're looking at numbers, they're not gonna be happy with what happens. So to your point, we do them, but we approach them in a little bit of a different
Well,
way.
in order to be compared to, right, apples to apples,
Exactly.
then you can't be like, well, this is what you're saying you need, which somebody sitting at a desk putting an RFP out there is going to be, potentially know what they need. In most cases, is going to miss multiple things, like you said, Derek. And the other add-on to that is whether it's an RFP or I've had plenty of customers call me for really small jobs that normally, and when I say normally, like in my mind, I'm like, I don't have time for this. However, I really, I'm not saying I'm perfect because we try hard, but in general, these small jobs oftentimes can turn into big jobs, whether it's with that individual or with somebody they know. So this $5,000 project could be a $50,000 project down the road. But if you don't take care of that $5,000 project, or you blow that opportunity off, and I guess for the young people out there who are opening businesses, take the work with customers that,
Say yes.
100%.
say yes.
Yeah.
If you can. I mean, obviously, if you're busy and you can't get to it right away, but also being honest, I think, is a big part of, should be an industry standard, which it is not. Don't tell a customer that you can be there next month if you know you can't.
Yeah.
Always leave yourself an out. My intentions are to get to you. Now, my industry is very weather dependent. So
Things happen, for sure.
So unfortunately, customers are going to hear what they want to, i.e., I might be able to get there in June. They heard,
I'll be there in May, or you'll be there in May. Great.
right?
We'll see you then.
And then so and by the way, I know that I like honesty, right? So as a consumer, if you are told, even if you know it's going to frustrate them or they're going to be upset about it, if you're honest, that's a very small amount of time that will be wasted on them being upset. Because in the end, when we do these projects, they're massive, big, and for long term. So, a day, a week, or even a month delay for something that's going to be a 10 plus year enjoyment, not a big deal.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things. Now, we're sensitive to people wanting things done when they sign a contract, but like I said, honesty, because you could only do so much. We're not going to compromise other work to get to another job sooner, so we're going to give them the same amount of time and respect that project deserves once we get there, but we're not going to get there until we finish the one we're on.
Well, you're also too, I mean, what I hear you saying is you're not just building a client base, you're also building a reputation that in turn is going to help you build a client base, right? Like if you go out there and you have the reputation for never showing up on time and being 2 months over and all these different things and not being upfront and honest with your clients, that's the reputation you're going to have.
Absolutely.
So I have plenty of friends that own businesses that, I know when I refer them over, I've got to issue a caveat, and I've had to do that so many times where I'm like, hey, listen, so-and-so might be able to help you, but as I give you this person's name, I need you to know a couple of things, and then I got to list them out because I don't want it to go with my endorsement. If they're amazing, I'll say they're amazing. But if I know that there's a couple of things that typically happen on their jobs, I'm going to be like, so here's a couple of things I know that happen. They're great people.
But your decision, I just want to be upfront.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So I want to circle back around to building that network a little bit and some of the behaviors that it takes to get new clients, especially in the beginning, because that's the most important time. But I don't want to leave cold calling just yet, because I've been in sales for 25 years. Your whole career you've been selling. I think that there is a lot of information out there that cold calling's dead and all these other things, and I want to make sure that we talk a little bit more about cold calling and about the fact that it is a tool, and I always say it's not just about getting business, but that there's a strength that you build with being able to make cold calls. It makes other things easier because it's so freaking hard. Because it is hard. It sounds easy picking up the phone, but...
Yeah, and you do that for 15, 20 minutes even and run through 10 cold calls, and you feel pretty good about yourself after doing it.
Yeah.
And you feel like you can accomplish anything. One thing that I always did was I tried to focus on the bigger goal and the bigger picture and let that drive the reason why I was doing it. And then you start to see results, and it feels good, right? And, you stack up the little wins, and those eventually turn into bigger wins, and the losses don't mean as much anymore.
I also think that in certainly industry specific, or it can be industry. Like in my business, cold calling is not ideal. Getting the call it would be nice to get cold call. Like if there was services, like for example, if we did landscape maintenance, obviously call businesses, get an RFP. Like that's the goal in that situation. But when you're doing what we do, not a lot of upfront solicitation of customers. However, where you do well as you build your business, this goes back to what we said earlier. is you do the job well, you'll get called back. I have, now that this business has been around for 10 years, I have multiple customers, and this year even, that we're going back to do another phase.
Yeah, you kind of get your own gravity, right? At that point, you start to attract it.
Yep.
But and I want to add too, though. So cold calling, like for Derek or I, we're cold calling other businesses, but there's also a way to look at it for whether you're an electrician or you're a plumber and you are consumer direct. What I would still consider cold calling is two behaviors. One is going to a Lowe's, a Home Depot, Ace Hardware, whatever it is, and being like, who are your installers? When people come in here asking questions for electrical, for plumbing, for construction, for framing, for painting, whatever it is, who do you tell them to call, right? And do you tell them to call? Do you have a book that I can put my card in, right? Sure. So I would consider that cold calling, because like Shaw that was on the show, I actually just met with him this morning. Like one of the things I was talking with him was like, if I were a brand new electrical contractor looking for clients, I would be at every single business that was related to that industry in some way that might be able to make my phone ring, and I'd be talking to those people. How do I get you to give my number out? So doing behaviors like that, and again, there's tons of industries that applies to, and landscaping too. Almost every business you can find. You just have to be a little creative. You might not be cold calling consumers direct, but there are people you can get yourself in front of from a cold, like you don't know them, get in front of them and just be like, hey, how do you get my number out there?
Yeah, adding to that, it's funny because cold calling is old school is dialing the phone and picking it up. And to your earlier point, you get 10 hang-ups or 10 no's. Well, we've been brought up in sales, if you've done any sales training, where like, hey, the closer you get to 10 or 20 or whatever that number is, the closer you get to the yes. So So don't look at it as a no, as a negative. Look at it as I'm closer to a yes.
Did you read the book Go for No?
I'm sure I did years ago.
If you're listening to this, check out the book Go for No. It's probably my favorite sales book.
The first sales job I had, so this will all come full circle.
Yeah.
The first sales job I ever had, besides my first landscaping company, when I got out of working for myself, there was a period of time when I was working for other companies, and I worked in the hardest, in my opinion, one of the hardest sales type of positions, and it was copier sales.
Yeah, that is hard.
So
I thought you were going to say combined life insurance.
I think that's even easier. Copier sales, and you got to remember this was in a time when, printing to, or I'm sorry, sending a file from your computer to a printer was a new concept, being networked, right? So color printers and copiers were amazing, but like buying a car. They were $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 type of machines I'm selling. And I had a territory that was back then not great, meaning there weren't a lot of doors I could open and could afford anything I was selling. So cold calling comes in two forms: picking up the phone and going door to door. Well, in the copier world, when you go door to door, there's a sign on a lot of people, no soliciting. That is specific to salesmen that sell copiers. They might as well say no copy salesman.
Yeah. So it's all your fault.
It's 100% not the industry's fault, not my fault, because I got out of that pretty quickly. And there are two types, and then there's in between. There's the gray area in between. Yeah. There's the farmer approach to sales, and then there's the hunter approach. I am a farmer with a hunter instinct. And so I'll explain that for the audience who doesn't know the analogy, but a hunter goes out like somebody who might sell a car or a house even, will go out, get the sale, and that customer is probably not buying anything for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years from you again. So it's a hard sell. Hard sell, you're just trying to get the numbers, you got management breathing down your neck, and that's one and done in most cases. And oftentimes, like in the copier world, we would have leases. Well, even after the end of the lease, it was already turned into company. Company would have somebody else calling them and just replace their equipment. You were kind of out of the loop. I dislike that whole sales cycle because I develop relationship with people. I enjoy them. If I'm selling to you, it's because I like you and I want to spend time with you and help you. Well, in the landscape industry, it allows me to do that. But in other sales types that are consumables, Derek would be in a situation, you would be in that situation, and some of what I do would be in that situation. That's where you cultivate a relationship, and you do that multiple times, like a farmer putting a crop in the ground. When the harvest comes in, now you're just pulling off. You just have it's feeding you for months on end. And if you do that right, in whatever industry you're in, you will not have to ever do quote unquote sales. It's just going to happen. It takes time. It also takes commitment, and it also takes, reducing your ego down to like, yeah, I can do better.
Yeah.
You're not the best. There's always something you can do better. So,
yeah,
food for thought.
Another thing, and I don't know if you ever did this, Chris, or if you've ever done this, Derek, but one of my other, especially if you're selling to residential customers, so if you're a landscaping company selling to homeowners, if you're an electrician, a contractor, whatever it is, and you're selling to a general consumer and you're not doing B2B sales, I still love to this day door hangers. I don't think there is any better strategy to penetrate a market when you're selling to homeowners than door to door. You can knock on the door if you want, and if someone doesn't, in this, it's a form of cold calling, right? Like it may not be over the phone, but you're still walking up cold. It's uncomfortable as hell. If they don't answer the door, you leave a door hanger. If they answer the door, you introduce yourself, you tell them who you are, tell them what you're up to. Similar to like what you guys said, right? Like you just, anyone that you can get in front of and get that conversation with, even if it's a no, it's still a rep. And the more reps you get, the better you get at it, and the more sales are going to come in. And I mean, in today's day and age, you think back, and we talked about this on a former episode, but 20 years ago, everybody knew how to caulk a tub and how to replace an outlet and do all those things. But now, no one knows how to do that stuff. It is staggering the number of people that can't change an outlet. You know what I mean? Or they can't fix their leaky sink or whatever it is.
Or change a light bulb.
Wild, right? And so what that says to me, like if you're in any of the home services trades, there's just so much opportunity, and all you literally got to do is go into a neighborhood and start knocking on doors. And if they're not there, leave a door hanger.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that future entrepreneurs or any business owners, and you guys would all agree, is response time. When I first started in business years ago, I had a pager. And the pager number was on the side of my truck because I lived at home. My parents, we didn't have like cell phones. We didn't have that.
Yep.
So somebody would call, and the next opportunity I had to go to a gas station or wherever I was to return that call or check the page because it was a customer. And if the faster you get back to a customer, because they're just going down a list of names and numbers, unless they know you specifically. And in this day and age with the onset of phones and technology we have today, it's a lot easier, right? You can text somebody as long as you respond. Yep, on it. I'll be in touch with you. Set up a schedule, but you have to follow up with people. You can't just, and again, it's not the easiest thing to do. I don't want to sit here and preach this and
none of it's easy, for sure.
Not let things slip through the cracks. But the best to your ability, following up on everybody who's reached out to you and helping them in some manner, whether it's you personally or your business helping them, or put them in the right track, because that will come back to you. At the very least, they won't have a negative impression of you, which is just as bad as, not returning their call or doing a poor job for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think one thing technology has really done, everybody's so used to getting a text message or, getting everything instantly. But when you actually get somebody on the phone and that can be nice to you and have a conversation, people want that.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, especially coming out of COVID, like everybody lost touch with people.
Yeah.
You get somebody in front of you that's generally trying to help you. They want to have that conversation.
So one last thing on cold calling, and then we'll jump over to building your network and networking and all that fun stuff and the fruit that yields. But I wanted to, because you guys were both talking about, number of calls and building wins. So I used to use a system, and then I used to teach the same system. And what that system was, we call that 25-4-2. And what it basically was every day I had a list where there was 25 cold calls I was going to make, right? So that's my first goal, 25 cold calls. Now, I hated cold calls. Everybody hates. The only people that like cold calls are like sales managers and people that don't make them, right? So I'd have a list of 25 names I was going to call. And if I got to 4 no's or 2 appointments, I'd be able to stop for the day. right? So whatever one I hit first, that was, so if I didn't get any no's and I didn't get any appointments, I'd have to make all 25 calls. If I got 4 no's in the first 4 calls, then I would get to be done for the day. And that was amazing. And it made me love the no, right? And it might even come out of the book, Go for the No. I'm not even sure. But a funny story about this is I was making cold calls one day, and I got tons of cold call stories, but this one kind of helps tell that tale. It's kind of funny, but so I'm making cold calls. I might have been like, I don't know, 8 calls in. I had 1 appointment set, and I had 3 no's. So like I was like, oh man, all I need is a no or an appointment, and I can be done making these freaking phone calls. And I get this guy on the phone, and he was nice, you know, not a bad guy, and but he was being wishy-washy, and he wasn't giving me a no or an appointment. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to him, and finally I was like, hey man, can you do me a favor? He's like, what's that? I was like, can you just tell me no, you don't want to meet with me? He's like, what? I'm like, just tell me no. I was like, because if you tell me no, that's my 4th no for the day, and I don't have to make any more cold calls. And he started laughing.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh man, he's like, just based on that, yes, I'll meet you. So I got my second appointment.
We're
I got to
honest.
stop for the day.
That goes for, there's the honesty.
Wild, right?
Yep.
So funny cold calling story, but you know, if you're listening, like I always really enjoyed that system because it kept me organized, because I knew every day I had to have 25 people, I had to make 25 calls, or I had little wins along the way towards that 25. Which 25
And that makes
was
sense.
painful.
Like 4 no's, you're kind of beat up a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't mind walking away.
Yeah.
You get a yes, you might be inclined to be like, you know what, I want to get one more yes.
I want to get a couple more.
That's day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's great.
So food for thought, everybody, if you're listening. So let's move over to network, because to me, in the beginning of launching a business, a lot of people pay a lot of money for marketing, and I own a marketing company. We do marketing for organizations every single day. And one thing I tell young businesses all the time is don't spend money on marketing in the first year of your business. You spend your time cold calling and networking, and those are the 2 things that you should be doing, and in multiple different ways, like we talked about with cold calling. And then on the networking side, so like you guys said in the beginning, right? The first thing is look for that low-hanging fruit, the people you trust, the easy wins, or at least the easy conversations, so that you can get reps in talking about who you are, talking about what you're doing, how you help people, what problems you solve. When you leave that circle, though, where do you guys go when you start to leave that comfortable circle of the people that you know? Because you're going to run out of that in the first 2 weeks, right? You're gonna reach out to the family, the friends, the people that you knew from high school, the people you knew from college, you know, all those people, the guy you play soccer with, whatever it is, right? And you leave that comfort zone, and you've got to go somewhere else for networking and building that network. That's going to the points that you're making are going to help bear fruit from a farming standpoint over time. Right? That powerful network, building relationships, getting people to know you and like you and trust you. Where do you guys suggest going out with your circle?
Groups. So some of these, you know, real estate groups are, Derek, you know a lot of them, you know a lot of them too, but some of the groups that you
look for, you know, associations, or, you know, even your local chamber of commerce. But
Absolutely.
You know, you got other local, you know, industry groups like. For us, and pay attention to who your customers are hanging out with.
Yeah, because it's going to be
groups they're a part of,
Yeah.
right? And you know, a lot of times if you're there, and you know, they'll be more likely to have the time and availability to talk with you. And also, you're putting yourself in front of a group of people that are like-minded and in a similar industry, or you know, whatever the case may be, and it's a perfect place, you know, for you to start.
Yeah. You got anything to add to that, Chris?
No, I think that's, you know, going off of that, I think building those relationships and then getting in those networks. I you know, it depends on the industry, right?
Yep.
You know, dialing back to betting on what you do. You know, I think a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC person, like I look at my industry and I'm like, this is, if I could do it all over again, I probably would have chosen electrical or plumbing, because I'm like, name your price, name your, you know, if you were a reliable contractor, you'll never not have work.
Yeah.
The difference between being a contractor that is a self performing contractor versus a contractor that owns a company that self performs, you know, that's where you get your growth and, you know, potential future. Like these blue collar industries that we're talking about are all very nice. You can make a very comfortable living. You can do exceptionally well, but it's all on how organized you are and how, you know, how well you do your craft. the end of the day, that's what you have to hang your plaque on, is your product that you put out there. You know, ironically, but in other types of sales, one thing I would just say, I don't care what industry you're in, it's confidence. And this goes back to I'm going to bring cold calling back in, but in general, there were times when I would meet with customers and they would have a project or whatever it is I'm selling, but a project in this case. And, you know, they would say, this is what we want. And I would say to them, that's not going to work. And it's specific to meaning, and I would explain to them what I was referring to, because it's going to cause future problems. It's going to damage your house. It's just not going to work for these reasons. Here's what we can do to mitigate, or right. And some people are receptive to that. Some people have met with other contractors that insist it will work. So this goes to the honesty and to the full circle in terms of how you build your business, making sure that when you do a project, you don't half-fast it. You make sure, and Derek would say, like, hey, I know we didn't get paid to pick up the parking lot, but you see all that trash, there's a pile that got left there, just do it, right? It's no different than when we have our guys on a project. I know we didn't get paid to mulch that bed over there, but it's in line of sight of my picture. It's not that much, just do it. So
Yeah, take 15 minutes to pick it up, right?
You know, there's literal and figurative, but like you need to just always be in motion, always doing something, and make the customer feel like you went out of your way to do extra, even if they don't recognize it, because there are people that will, and it will go a long way. And I apologize that I went off on a little tangent there,
No apology needed, sir.
but we're on a podcast. That's what
That's right.
happens.
That's what we do
perfect.
here. It's usually me pulling people in tangents, so you know,
Yeah.
no worries.
And also, you know, confidence when you're at events, or if you go to a networking event, you're going to be the new person, the new face. You can't be afraid to look people in the eyes, shake their hand, tell them what you're doing, and even if it's very minimal or nothing yet, you know.
So I met Derek.
Yeah, we met at a
Bank.
function, networking event,
And then that bank closed. It's now Broadview. It was Capcom.
it merged. Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
So, they're pretty big. But yeah, you never know who you're going to meet, and you know, you just got to project that confidence and do a good job when your time comes.
I know, looking at my numbers from the past 25 years, but specifically in the last 10 years, and even before that, when I was in a blue collar industry, I know that those two approaches of cold calling and networking, I definitely closed way more business from networking, right? Because it's
a soft.
It's a softer approach. And I always tell the story of, to put it in perspective, if I'm at a backyard barbecue and you and I don't know each other, and I walk across the yard and introduce myself and tell you who I am, that's cold calling. It's going to be weird for both of us, right? Because you're going to be like, why is this guy talking to me right now? Like, and then the other part is, I go to Derek and I go, hey man, do you know Chris? And he's like, yeah, I know Chris, man. Go over, introduce yourself, and tell him that you know me. That's a little warmer, but it's still, you know, it's not quite a cold call, and it's kind of networking, but it's leveraging. And this is where like social media comes in. You can use this approach across social media of using people that you know to introduce you to other people that they know. But then the real magic happens from a networking standpoint of when I get Derek to walk me across the yard, introduce me, say how freaking great I am, and say nice things, and now we're talking, and we're in that. Literally, that's how you and I met, right? I mean, like, Derek, because of Derek, we're now friends. We're doing work for you. You know what I mean? Like, and I think when you approach networking that way, of really looking at, like, when I go to an event, if I know no one, my first job is to meet one person, right? And then I'm gonna have a real conversation with that person. I'm going to be interested in who they are. I'm not going to just talk about myself. I'm not going to just put my hand out trying to get business, but I'm going to get to know that person. And then I'm going to ask that person, like, hey, listen. And this, I think this is a really powerful thing of being authentic when you're doing networking and just being humble about it. You want to be confident, but you don't want to be arrogant, and just being like, hey, I don't know anybody else here, man. Based on our conversation, is there someone else that you could maybe introduce me to here that I could talk to? And then that person helps me get to the next person, and then I get to know them, and then I ask the same, and then sooner or later, if you're consistent, and I think to really fully leverage networking, you need to be consistent, and whatever it is, whether it's a chamber of commerce or a BNI or a Gold Star or a Nesca or whatever it is, like being there and being seen. And then over time, it takes about 6 months and you know everybody in the damn room. And now it's no longer hard. And right?
I was going to say, like, when you go to those networking events, everybody there is typically like an extrovert that we are as people that are in sales. Even if you're not self-admitting that you are, because in order to do any type of sales, you have to have some of that ability to be outside yourself. So the comforting part is everybody there is in the same boat and usually are very willing to, of course I know that person. So they're more than happy to introduce you. Quite honestly, if you just stand amongst a group of people and chime into the conversation at the given point, they're like, oh, and they'll introduce themselves to you. But it's actually the most comfortable place for a person who's got something they're selling, because that is the expectation. There's usually multiple industries there represented, lawyers, bankers, and, all different industries, right? So real estate agents. And then, when it comes to our industry, Derek, in my industry, well, those are people that definitely either know people that need our service or might even need our service. So I think that piece is a huge missed opportunity, because I think a lot of the industries, in the blue collar world, one, if they're small proprietaries, the individual ownerships, they don't feel they have the time, and that's okay if they're that busy where they don't need to.
If you got work, keep doing what you're doing, right?
But to next level it, if you're growing a business where you have other employees, getting in front of people, because you never know, you flip that stone over, that could be your biggest deal you ever had. And it was just going to one thing and having a cocktail or hanging out and having some hors d'oeuvres and just mingling with somebody. Be yourself, let things happen naturally, don't force it, and good things will happen. Patience,
it's hard but necessary.
Yeah. Classic book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
It was one that I read just after I graduated from college, and that really gave me some perspective with how to approach people, how to ask the right questions, learn about them, and figure out how you can help them.
Well, the question part is spot on, right? And and if you can't see, Chris is nodding his head, making that face that says, like, yeah, obviously, Mike, right? Oh, yeah. Mick Taylor, make sure you put that in. Zoom right in on. So, but I think people that haven't done networking, so for the young blue-collar startups, for the people that maybe they're in their first year, if you're going to networking events, I think the expectation that people build in their minds is they've got to go and they've got to tell people all these great things. And I'll tell you right now, don't do that.
Agreed.
Ask questions. Ask questions. That everyone's favorite subject is themselves. And if you get someone talking about themselves, they're going to think you're the best ever.
You remember their name.
Yeah, right? The next time you see them. I'll tell you, when you get into business, one of the things that everyone starts telling you, well, you got a good 60-second commercial. And for the record, I freaking hate 60-second commercials.
They don't work.
Nobody
listens to it.
No.
60 seconds? Are you kidding me?
People's eyes glaze right over.
3 seconds you got.
So the tactic that I used to use when I would network a lot is when you go into a networking event, you get in front of someone, and what's the first thing they ask you? So what do you do? And my response was always the same. What I do is boring. Tell me about what you do. And I would immediately get them talking, and I would ask questions, and I'd ask questions, and I'd ask questions, and I'd get everything I could about them. And then it would give me the ability that if I was going to tell them what I do, I would be able to craft it specifically to everything that they just told me, because I asked a whole bunch of questions about them, their business, what they do, where they go, all these things. I know a ton about them, and now I can say something specific that's meaningful to them. And if by the end of them telling me all the answers to those questions, if they couldn't do that, I'd be like, oh, I do marketing.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't even, you know what I mean? Because it's like, there's no meaningful thing I can say.
My boss dragged me here.
Yeah, right? And we'd laugh and blah, blah, and then I would move on to go talk to somebody else so that I wasn't wasting their time and I was being efficient with my time. But I think questions is huge, like throughout the whole networking process.
I think the curiosity factor, I think if you're a people person in general, like that's definitely something that I employed. Like you have to be interested in otit people. It can't all be about yourself. Obviously, when we're called by our customers to look at something, or whether it's a marketing project or, you know, in your industry, Derek, my assumptions are that the customer is calling me because they need something.
Mm-hmm.
I want to find out what it is they think they need, because they all think they know what they need. But if you approach it with respect, right? But at the end of the day, you want to say, "You sure you want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
There might be a better way. Let's talk about it."
Yep.
Right? Sometimes it's very straightforward. That's what they want. Let's talk about it. We'll get you a price. If you like it, we'll do the job. But in many industries, there's always multiple ways to do the same thing, but there's probably a better way, right?
Yeah.
There's always a better way.
And I always like to help the client understand that. I've won more jobs because I've opened up. I'm like, "Hey, what are you doing over there for this?" Or "What are you doing?" Like, just open their eyes to issues that they didn't think about. Mostly, like, quite honestly, in our industry, is like drainage, right? Where's the water going? Where are you putting water? Where are those? Just some simple things that customers either didn't think about, or their previous contractor didn't talk to them about. They ignored it. And the customer's like, "You know what? I know you're a little bit more, but you're doing all these extra things, and I like what you had to say, because you're trying to alleviate future problems." And I think if you just can think like that, and I don't care what industry you're in, that's what you want to do. You always want to be a friend but a helper to your client.
Yeah, you put them first.
Yeah.
Do what's right.
Care.
Yep.
It matters.
You'll become a unicorn, and people love unicorns. So
I think that's a great place to wrap it up.
Yeah,
People
I
love
know
unicorns.
we're getting tight on time
Unicorns.
here.
yeah,
Any parting thoughts, Chris?
go get them.
Go get them.
Oh, and go Bills.
And go Bills. Oh. Well, we'll see, I guess. I hear you. Well, I'd say I hear, but you're the one that told me that they got a good season in front of them.
I think they did. Noah knows. You could ask Noah, what's their first 4 games, Noah?
Oh.
The Ravens.
Ravens, Jets, Dolphins, and then quite honestly, I forgot the fourth.
Noah,
I'm sorry.
come on, man.
I'm selling.
We brought you on for
I dropped
this
the bag.
this
I dropped
piece,
the
man.
bag. Yeah,
We'll get you back on close to the season. A little commentary.
A little commentary. Derek, how about you? Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, don't give up. Just because you hear the word no, once or twice, keep moving. And again, it's not easy.
It's definitely not easy.
No.
But that's why it's fun.
Yep. Because when you get a yes, it feels really
Oh my
good.
God.
Yep.
I've had that conversation a lot lately. I feel like I'm like, if you don't know, you don't know. But man, when you win in sales and business and you get those, oh God, it's nothing better.
Absolutely.
Nothing better.
Yeah.
Somebody is trusting you and paying you a pile of money to do whatever it is that you do, and you're like, wait, they did that? Okay.
Yeah.
And then that's where the future of sales, like for your organization, come from. The confidence.
Yeah.
Because until you do it 1 time or 2 times, you start to, it becomes easier. One, you've gotten yeses, so you know that you're not incapable of getting a yes. So keep pushing forward.
Yep.
A no is closer to a yes than you think.
Yeah. And read that book, Go for No, guys and
Go
girls.
for no.
Everybody, thanks for joining us. Of course, as always, thanks to our sponsors. Do we just bring a new sponsor on? All of a sudden, I'm having a...
Yeah, Martin Electric, actually.
Martin Electric. Oh, my God. Sorry, guys.
Electric. Well played.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, guys. Really appreciate it. That was a fun episode.
It was, and Kendra's full of great insights, and it's great.
Yeah, I look forward to getting them back on, and super grateful for the sponsorship and helping us do what we do here on the podcast. And, of course, our other sponsors as well. Thanks to Peopleese, Bonaccio, MLB Construction, Michael's Group. Thanks to Scott and Stacy over at Catamount Consulting for all the help that they're giving us and support, and just really appreciate everybody. And I didn't forget anybody, did I?
No, I think
Thanks to
you covered.
Daigle Cleaning System for being so awesome.
We try.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks to my team at 5 Towers for making the podcast great and getting all the legwork done. So, and most of all, thanks everybody for listening. Really appreciate it, and you'll hear from us next week.
And that wraps up another episode of Blue Collar Startup. A big thank you to our sponsors, 5 Towers Media, Daigle Cleaning Systems, Daigle Fire Solutions, The Michaels Group, Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Peopleese, and Catamount Consulting for making this podcast possible. And thank you for tuning in. If you learned something or felt inspired, connect with us on our website at bluecollarstartup.io or email us at hardhat.bcsu@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your questions and topic ideas. Help us spread the word by sharing the show and following us on social media for updates. Until next time, keep on building, keep on dreaming, and keep hustling like your future depends on it.